Everyone, Charles Mackenzie from Infected Blood Australia, and today I'd like to talk to you about the reality of living in Australia for a victim of contaminated blood transfusions. There are tens of thousands of Australians that were infected with the deadly virus hepatitis C from contaminated blood transfusions before the 2000s, although we've had victims, people come to us who've claimed to have been infected with hep C from blood transfusion up until 2010. So up until recently, it seems Australia's blood supply has been infecting people with hep C, but the reality is the greatest number of infections occurred in the 1970s and the 1980s. Thousands of people have been killed. But there are survivors, people like myself. I was infected as a child, and I didn't trust the government early on. And if you go to infectedbloodaustralia.com, you can read a bit more about my life as a kid. I knew other kids who'd been killed by infected blood, and as a result, I was suspicious when it was my turn to be given to be given blood. I suspected I'd be given contaminated blood. This is 1980s, and I was told I was crazy for thinking that. In 1991, I then sought private testing outside of my hospital, and I proved that I was right, and that my hospital and the health authorities in Australia were basically deceiving me and others, right? So I've spent 30 years trying to investigate Australia's blood scandal, but at the same time trying to stay alive. I have bone marrow failure, I've got a heart condition, and the virus that I got as a kid from a contaminated blood product has caused me to develop an evolving neurological condition. I still have the hepatitis C virus. I've been unable to get rid of it, although if people have it today, they can seek treatment, and these treatments can get rid of it rather rapidly. But unfortunately, with all my other health conditions, I can't have that treatment safely. So I live naturally, and I take a great interest in my health. I take vitamins, I eat very well, I exercise as often as I can. I'm also a medicinal cannabis patient. Now, the great thing about medicinal cannabis is this wasn't available to me in the 90s and the 2000s. We had many people on our group, hundreds of people die who we knew. And the good thing about medicinal cannabis is that this has changed the game a bit. We've got victims in our group, people who've developed cancer as a result of having had hepatitis C, and they've actually extended their lives through medicinal cannabis, okay? And we've even had people who've been able to, combat some really bad conditions with this. And with me, what's happened is that I was bedbound and unable really to get out of bed. And then a few years ago, I met a guy I call the Cannabis Blood Brother, affectionately called, and he taught me about the power of medicinal cannabis for people with chronic disease like myself, and I was able to extend my life. And with these extra years, I've been able to help reignite the campaign for victims of Australia's deadliest medical scandal, hepatitis C contaminated blood transfusions. Now, the plan was we would reignite the campaign. We knew it would take a few years, but what I've been managed to do is we've established this group, Infected Blood Australia. I've been a witness participating in an inquiry into the infected blood scandal in the UK. I made a statement to that inquiry about 16 months ago. It's still not published. It's a major scandal, this. There's tens of thousands of Australians infected, so I think probably it's going to take some time as people go through all of the legal ramifications of this. But this is the medicinal cannabis. One of the prescriptions I get. It's 10 grams of dried cannabis costs hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and it's more expensive. It's basically double the price that it would be if I went and bought it illegally from the street. Well, obviously I'm not very cool because I don't buy it illegally. I don't know anyone to buy it anyway, even if I did, which I don't. I'd just like it to be normal. I'd like to go and get my prescription normally, thank you very much. I don't like taking pharmaceuticals because they can damage my liver, and I'm trying to keep the cancer off my liver. This is the cancer that hepatitis C so frequently can give people after many years, right? And we've got people with liver cancer in our group who are fighting this, okay? And we have to pay for all of our own medicine. So in order for me to walk or function, I've got to take this medicinal cannabis. And what's been happening lately is my funds have been running low, like so many people in our group. We have to fend for ourselves. We didn't do this to ourselves, not that we want bad things to happen to other people, but this was done knowingly. The government knew that the blood supply was contaminated. When I was infected as a kid, they knew. And they allowed me to be injected anyway, and they did this to so many other people in our group. We've got the evidence. They know overseas at this infected blood inquiry that in the 1980s, so many of these blood products they knew were contaminated by hepatitis and just kept giving them to people. So now they've affected my whole life, and I've got to shell out, okay? And so I have to ration this. My muscles, because of this neurological condition, they don't get the blood flow into them. So unless I take the cannabis, I can't do things like urinate, okay? And my bladder gets very full. I can't sleep. I have fits at night. I can't walk. I can't eat. I have nausea. I have itchy skin all over my body. It's torture. It's like a living crucifixion, a low-level crucifixion, right? So I have to ration my pain allowances. Okay, so I take this when I want to go to the toilet or when I go to sleep, and it costs hundreds of dollars, okay? So sometimes I just go without, okay? And I end up having accidents and all sorts of terrible things. And I'm one of the lucky ones, okay? I'm one of the group that doesn't have cancer, okay? And they have to fend for themselves. There's no services, there's no counselling. If we were contaminated blood victims in Canada, we'd have access to services. If we were contaminated blood victims in Ireland or any other country in the world, now the United Kingdom, there's counselling through the British Red Cross. There's nothing for us here, nothing. It's because no one wants to know. The Australian Red Cross don't want to know. The blood products maker CSL don't want to know. The Australian government doesn't want to know. No one wants to know, okay? Even the government-funded hepatitis C bodies, they don't want to know because they see us as discriminatory. Me asking for help, they call me discriminatory because they go, well, why should you get help? What about the other people with viruses? This is what they say. And I go, well, look, I didn't do... They did this to me knowingly as a child. They still haven't had legal investigation. And like, you're telling me I'm discriminating against people for asking for help for my group. People who've got cancer from Hep C, from blood products from being knowingly infected, and they give us 10 grams of bloody cannabis, which costs us hundreds and hundreds of dollars, so I have to ration. It's like being in a living kind of, a living sort of depression novel, you know, like from the 1920s, or a living misery, okay, that we didn't ask for. The Australian government did this to us, right? Yeah, this is the nightmare. This is the nightmare. And I'm one of the lucky ones, right? Yeah. So my point is this. What happens if your healthcare goes wrong? What happens if a medical procedure or a medical product, okay, or an injection goes wrong for you? Okay? Many of our group have got no legal recourse because the government legally indemnified the company that made the blood products, CSL. So that's it. They've lost their homes, they've lost their health, they've lost their lives, 1,400 people have died, there's no help, there's no counselling, there's no nothing. And survivors are led to fend for ourselves. But remember, if I buy this illegally off the street, I'm a criminal and the police will arrest me and I'll probably be assaulted, right? And I've got a bone marrow disease and a bleeding disorder. So if I'm bashed by a policeman, I could bleed to death. If they break my cheekbone or break a bone, I will bleed to death. Nothing will stop that. So I don't want to do things that are illegal. What can I do? What do we do? Okay, what do we do? This is Australia today, okay? Please go to our bio, and if you can support this situation, because healthcare in Australia is an absolute nightmare, you know? It's the worst thing in the world. They lie, they cheat, they cover up, they destroy your records, and they leave you in the situation where we've got to beg for pain relief. I have to ration to go to the toilet or ration to go to sleep. How disgusting! How disgusting, really! Please go to our bio and click on the link to support a Royal Commission of Inquiry into the Australian Red Cross CSL blood scandal. Okay, we've got victims with cancer, they get no help. Tens of thousands were knowingly infected. We've got women who were given contaminated blood during childbirth, right? They've lost their marriages, they've got no help. We've got parents who lost young children. They lost children to contaminated blood. They wanted to donate their own blood, but were told, no, the blood supply is safe. And then, what do you know, their child got contaminated with Hep C, and then their child dies, and then it's all covered up. This is our group, this is our reality. Please help us.